One of the goals in writing this book was to explore, for me, but also to share more widely, the experiences of real Cubans, to cast Cubans as individuals and not as the other, as the enemy. You know, we're strangers despite being 90 miles away. During close to 20 years of research in Cuba and of working with filmmakers, I realized that certain individuals were always profiled, always featured, the maestros, the founding fathers of Cuba's film tradition, and there were a lot of other things going on in the film world that no one was talking about. Early on, video was, I think, underappreciated, not only in Cuba. I think the world over there was a prejudice against video. Oh boy, if it's not on 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, it's not worth watching. And you know, I was kind of bothered by that. I was thinking, but this is something new and it's emerging and it's pretty compelling. And so I started to move away from film and away from the canon of high art and started to work with these younger people in the streets making videos. The Film Institute in Cuba was founded through the second decree of the new government, if you can imagine that. You have this revolution, you make this huge socio-political change, and you say right off the bat, one of the first things we're going to do is establish a film institute so that we can educate people, so that we can depict our own world, so that it's not Hollywood and Carmen Miranda with a fruit headdress depicting who we are. Young people are filming, many of them continuing the revolutionary agenda, continuing to probe topics of social justice, continuing to give voice to those who are still disenfranchised, despite some of the gains of the revolution in terms of providing greater access to health care, providing education for all. I absolutely did witness this dramatic transformation that occurred with the breakup of the Soviet Union and the economic collapse that followed. I remember going to a play. I was working with some of my students at William & Mary. We were translating a play by Jose Milian, and he invited me to come and see his latest work being staged. And I met him at his apartment, and he carried a light bulb along, and when we walked into the theater, he put the light bulb in to illuminate the theater. Now to go, let's say 1 year for the festival, to go back a year later in the midst of this crisis and to embrace my friend and feel his arms as these bony skeletal arms where they had been fleshy, muscular arms, to see people in my orbit, you know, losing 30 or 40 pounds. So it was a very difficult time. And yet, filmmaking didn't stop, which I think is remarkable. And I'm a big believer in cultural agency. I think it's something that motivates my teaching and my scholarship. I think we are capable of employing culture, employing education to build tolerance, foster understanding, foment creativity, and granted to a limited extent, because I'm also not going to say, you know, my students and I are changing the world in a big way, but I do think we can make a difference, and I think as an educator it's important to me to empower students to see themselves as cultural agents. I'm heading to Cuba in December for the International Festival of New Latin American Cinema, and it will be 20 years since I first stepped onto the tarmac at the Jose Marti Airport in Havana. A lot has happened since then in, you know, my life and certainly in Cuba.